My dear friend, if you have found your way to these words, it is likely because you carry within yourself that particular burden and gift of the intuitive introvert. You know well the weight of seeing patterns others cannot perceive, of sensing the undercurrents that flow beneath the surface of everyday conversation. You understand what it means to be called strange, too sensitive, or simply misunderstood. Let me speak to you as one who has walked this path and spent a lifetime observing the human psyche in all its complexity. The intuitive introvert lives in a world that often feels alien to their nature. You are asked to be more social when your energy comes from solitude. You are pressed to focus on concrete details when your mind naturally grasps the symbolic and the possible. You are encouraged to follow conventional paths when your soul yearns for meaning and authenticity above all else. But here is what I want you to understand with absolute clarity. Your difference is not a defect to be corrected. It is a calling to be honored. The world needs what you carry within you, while others rush toward external achievements and social approval. You possess the rare capacity to turn inward and discover the treasures that lie hidden in the depths of the psyche. You are naturally equipped for what I have called the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming who you truly are, rather than who others expect you to be. This is not an easy path, my friend. The collective consciousness, what I call the collective unconscious, when it manifests through social conformity, exerts tremendous pressure on individuals to fit into predetermined molds. For the intuitive introvert, this pressure can feel overwhelming. You may find yourself wondering if there is something fundamentally wrong with you, why you cannot simply be content with surface pleasures and conventional success. Let me share with you what I learned through years of working with individuals just like yourself, and through my own struggles with being misunderstood. The first step is to recognize that your introversion is not withdrawal from life, but rather a different way of engaging with life. Where the extrovert gains energy from external interaction, you gain energy from internal reflection. This is not selfishness, it is self-care. It is the necessary condition for you to have anything meaningful to offer the world. Your intuitive nature allows you to perceive possibilities that others miss entirely. You see connections, patterns, and potential futures. This gift can feel isolating because you often see what is coming before others are ready to acknowledge it. You may find yourself frustrated when you try to share these insights, only to be met with blank stares or dismissal. Remember that the prophet is rarely welcomed in his own time. I have observed throughout my career that the intuitive introvert often possesses what I call a natural connection to the collective unconscious, that vast repository of human experience and wisdom that lies beneath the surface of individual consciousness. Your dreams are likely rich and symbolic. Your waking hours are filled with sudden insights and knowing that seems to come from nowhere. This is not imagination run wild, but rather your psyche's natural ability to tap into deeper currents of understanding. The key to living authentically as an intuitive introvert lies in what I call the transcendent function, the bridge between your conscious understanding and the wisdom of your unconscious mind. This requires developing a relationship with your inner world that is as real and important to you as any external relationship. You must learn to trust your inner voice, even when it contradicts the opinions of those around you. Many of you have experienced what I might call the curse of seeing too much. You walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional undercurrents. You meet someone new and instinctively know things about their character that they themselves might not yet recognize. You feel the collective mood shifts in your community, your workplace, even in the broader culture, sometimes weeks or months before they become obvious to others. This sensitivity can feel overwhelming. You may have tried to shut it down, to become more like others who seem blissfully unaware of these subtleties. But I urge you to reconsider this impulse. Your sensitivity is not a burden to be overcome, but a gift to be refined and channeled constructively. Pay attention to your dreams, for they are letters from your unconscious self. Notice the symbols and images that repeatedly appear in your inner life. These are not random occurrences, but meaningful communications from the deeper layers of your psyche. The intuitive introvert is naturally gifted at understanding symbolic language, but you must cultivate this ability consciously. I have found that those of your temperament often struggle with what I call the problem of the inferior function. While your intuition is highly developed, you may find yourself struggling with practical matters, with details, with the mundane necessities of daily life. This is not a character flaw, but rather the natural result of your psychic energy being directed primarily toward the inner world of possibilities rather than the outer world of concrete realities. The solution is not to force yourself to become what you are not, but rather to develop a conscious relationship with these less developed aspects of your personality. You may never become a master of practical details, but you can learn to respect their importance and find ways to manage them that do not drain your essential energy. Create space for solitude not as escape from the world, but as preparation for engaging with the world more authentically. In solitude, you can process the overwhelming stimulation of external life and connect with your own center. This is not antisocial behavior. It is the necessary work of knowing yourself. I must address here a particularly painful aspect of the intuitive introvert's experience, the loneliness that comes from being fundamentally different from the majority. You may have spent years trying to fit in, only to discover that the cost of such fitting in is the loss of your authentic self. You may have relationships where you feel you must constantly explain yourself, where your natural way of being is seen as problematic or inadequate. This loneliness is real and it is valid, but it is also temporary, in the sense that it lessens as you become more secure in your own nature and more skilled at finding your tribe. There are others like you, though they may be scattered and difficult to find. Quality connections matter more than quantity for your temperament. When you do engage with others, do so from this place of self-knowledge rather than from a desire to please or fit in. You will find that authentic connection, though less frequent, is far more satisfying than the surface interactions that exhaust you. Quality over quantity should be your motto in all relationships. I want to speak specifically about the challenges you face in professional environments, for this is where many intuitive introverts suffer most acutely. The modern workplace often rewards quick decision-making, constant social interaction, and focus on immediate, tangible results. Your natural preference for reflection, your need to understand the deeper implications of decisions, your insight into long-term consequences, these may be undervalued or even seen as impediments to progress. You may find yourself in meetings where your contributions are overlooked, not because they lack value, but because they operate on a different wavelength from the prevailing consciousness. You see the forest while others are focused on individual trees. You understand the interconnections while others are concerned with isolated facts. My advice is this: learn to translate your insights into language that others can understand and appreciate. This is not dumbing down your thoughts, but rather developing the skill of communication across psychological types. Your insights are valuable precisely because they see what others miss, but they must be presented in ways that make their practical value clear. Remember that feeling misunderstood is often the price of being authentic. The majority of people operate from a different psychological type than yours, and they will naturally misinterpret your motivations and behaviors. This is not personal rejection, though it may feel that way. It is simply the result of different ways of being in the world. Your task is not to make everyone understand you, but to understand yourself so deeply that external misunderstanding cannot shake your foundation. When you know who you are and why you are the way you are, the opinions of others become less important than your own integrity. The process of individuation requires great courage, especially for those who are naturally sensitive to the disapproval of others. You must be willing to disappoint people who expect you to be someone you are not. You must be willing to stand alone when your inner truth conflicts with popular opinion. This is the heroic journey of the individual soul. I have observed that many intuitive introverts struggle with what might be called the burden of potential. You see so many possibilities, so many paths that could be taken, so many ways that situations could unfold, that decision-making becomes paralyzed by options. While others see one or two choices, you see dozens. This can lead to a kind of analysis paralysis that prevents action altogether. The antidote to this is to develop what I call a relationship with time that honors both your need for reflection and the practical necessity of moving forward. Not every decision requires exhaustive analysis. Learn to distinguish between decisions that deserve your full contemplative attention and those that can be made more quickly, even if imperfectly. Your intuitive nature also makes you particularly susceptible to what I call psychic contagion, the unconscious absorption of the emotional and psychological states of others. You may find yourself carrying moods and anxieties that do not belong to you, becoming depressed after spending time with depressed people, or anxious after exposure to anxious individuals. This is not weakness, but rather the natural result of your permeable psychological boundaries. Learning to protect your psychic space becomes essential for your well-being. This might involve limiting your exposure to negative influences, developing rituals of psychological cleansing after difficult interactions, or simply becoming more conscious of when your emotions truly belong to you versus when they have been absorbed from others. The shadow side of your giftedness must also be acknowledged. Your ability to see possibilities can sometimes manifest as an inability to accept present realities. Your preference for depth over breadth can lead to a kind of intellectual arrogance or impatience with those who operate differently. Your sensitivity to criticism can make you overly defensive or withdrawn. These are not character flaws to be ashamed of, but rather natural tendencies to be understood and consciously managed. The goal is not perfection, but rather conscious relationship with all aspects of your personality, including those that might sometimes cause difficulties. I want to address specifically the spiritual dimension of your experience, for many intuitive introverts find themselves naturally drawn to questions of meaning, purpose, and transcendence. Your ability to perceive beyond the surface of things often leads to profound spiritual insights and experiences. You may find conventional religious approaches unsatisfying, not because you lack spiritual hunger, but because your hunger is for direct experience rather than dogmatic belief. This spiritual sensitivity is both gift and challenge. It can lead to profound experiences of connection and meaning, but it can also lead to periods of existential crisis when the material world feels empty of significance. Learning to navigate these spiritual waters requires developing your own relationship with the transcendent, one that honors your individual nature rather than forcing you into pre-existing molds. The question of life purpose is likely central to your concerns. Unlike those who can find satisfaction in conventional success markers, you require work and relationships that align with your deeper values and utilize your natural gifts. This is not selfishness or impracticality, but rather psychological necessity. When you attempt to live in ways that contradict your essential nature, you will inevitably experience what I call neurotic symptoms, the psyche's way of protesting an inauthentic existence. Finding your authentic path often requires patience and experimentation. Your purpose may not reveal itself all at once, but rather unfold gradually as you develop greater self-knowledge and courage to follow your inner guidance. Trust in this process, even when it seems to move more slowly than you would prefer. But remember, you are not truly alone in this journey. Throughout history, there have been others like you, the artists, the mystics, the visionaries who saw beyond the limitations of their time. You belong to this invisible community of souls who have always known that there is more to existence than meets the eye. They faced the same challenges you face, the same misunderstanding, the same pressure to conform, and yet they persisted in being authentically themselves, and in doing so they enriched the world immeasurably. Think of the great introverted intuitives throughout history, the poets who saw beauty where others saw only mundane reality, the scientists who perceived patterns that revolutionized human understanding, the philosophers who asked questions that others had not thought to ask. Each of them, in their own time, was likely considered strange, impractical, too sensitive, or simply misunderstood. Your contemporary struggle is part of this ancient pattern. The world has always needed those who can see beyond the immediate and obvious, but it has also always been uncomfortable with such vision. This tension is not something to be resolved, but rather something to be consciously engaged with throughout your life. Trust in the wisdom of your own nature. Your sensitivity is not weakness, but perception. Your need for solitude is not antisocial, but necessary for your psychological health. Your intuitive insights are not fantasies, but glimpses of deeper truths. Your refusal to accept conventional answers is not rebelliousness, but the beginning of wisdom. The world may not always understand you, but it desperately needs what you have to offer. In a time of increasing superficiality and disconnection, you carry the capacity for depth and meaning. In a world that has forgotten the importance of the inner life, You are a living reminder that true fulfillment comes from within. Your contribution to the collective human experience may not always be obvious or immediately recognized. You may never receive the external validation that our culture seems to demand.
But your very existence, your commitment to authenticity, your refusal to abandon your inner truth for the sake of social acceptance, these create ripples of influence that extend far beyond what you can see. Every time you choose authenticity over conformity, you give permission to others to do the same. Every time you trust your inner wisdom over external pressure, you strengthen the collective capacity for individual consciousness. Every time you remain true to your sensitive, intuitive nature, you preserve something precious that the world cannot afford to lose. Be patient with yourself as you learn to honor your nature. Be compassionate with others who cannot see what you see. And above all, have the courage to become who you truly are. For this is the greatest gift you can give both to yourself and to the world. The path of the intuitive introvert is not the easiest path, but it may well be the most meaningful one. Walk it with confidence, knowing that you are exactly as you are meant to be. The world needs your depth, your sensitivity, your vision, and your unwavering commitment to authenticity. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise.